Hey there, deckheads! The May 2024 Humble Choice was released a few days ago. I'm going to review it to help you decide whether this latest bundle is worth your cash or is just plain trash. Throughout all the gameplay footage you'll see, I am playing with my deck. That's right, in all these reviews, I also focus on how well the game plays and performs on the Steam Deck. So, without further ado, let's get started. Yakuza Like a Dragon is the third most recent entry in the long-running Yakuza franchise. With the story starting off on New Year's Eve 2000, the new protagonist, Ichiban Kasuga, takes over the reins for longtime series lead Kazuma Kiryu, making the game feel fresh yet still familiar. The story and voice acting are on point, as you'd expect from the Yakuza series. My advice is to set the audio to Japanese for the full experience. The English localization is solid, but nothing beats hearing those iconic Yakuza voices in the original Japanese, as intended. Trust me, it'll make the drama and intensity hit even harder. I will say this about the story though. As with past entries in the Yakuza series, some of the game isn't voice acted, and it can feel a little bit disjointed. If this was just the case for side missions, then it could be forgiven, but this also happens for some of the interactions that are included in the main storyline. The biggest change in Like a Dragon is the combat system. A love letter to classic JRPGs like Dragon Quest, you and your party of misfits take turns dishing out attacks and skills. Still true to the Yakuza style of gameplay we all love, you can pick up random objects on the street and use them to beat thugs and other lowlifes into next century. Well-timed button mashes and quick-time events can further improve the damage from your skills or even negate most of the incoming damage, much like in the old Mario and Luigi RPGs. It's a fresh take on Yakuza's signature street fights, and it works surprisingly well. The turn-based action is just as intense and over the top as the series' previous brawling, with a ton of wacky jobs, skills, and party members to experiment with. Personally, I think it's the best combat system yet in the Yakuza series. The game looks great and plays really well on the deck. Originally developed for the PlayStation, the game was designed with a controller in mind, so it feels very intuitive in the deck's handheld mode. There were one or two pauses early into the game when it was loading a cutscene, but I suspect this was not so much an issue with the deck's performance, as opposed to an underlying yet inevitable issue with the game itself. All the visuals look absolutely stunning, which you'd expect from a Yakuza game. Playing this game is making me seriously consider upgrading to the OLED deck. Mind you, at this point, I'm just looking for any excuse to get that OLED. Yakuza Like a Dragon is a must-play. Even if you're not a long-standing fan of the Yakuza series or a regular JRPG player, you're gonna love this game. Hi-Fi Rush is a rhythm-based action-adventure game that took the gaming world by storm, particularly within the Steam Deck community. Seemingly appearing out of nowhere, this title quickly became one of the game's most closely associated with a portable gaming device. Players take on the role of Chai, a wannabe rock star who finds himself unexpectedly entangled in a high-stakes rebellion against an evil robotics enhancement megacorp. At the heart of Hi-Fi Rush's gameplay is a unique fusion of action and music. Players must time their attacks and dodges to the beat of the game's energetic soundtrack, creating a dynamic and engaging combat system that rewards players' sense of rhythm. This rhythm-infused approach extends beyond just the combat, with various environmental puzzles and traversal challenges also syncing up to the beat. One of the standout features of Hi-Fi Rush is its commitment to witty writing. The game's dialogue is brimming with clever quips, tongue-in-cheek humor, and a self-aware charm that keeps players engaged and entertained throughout the entire experience.
Is that a weapon?
I don't think so.
I think he's resisting.
The game plays seamlessly on the Steam Deck, with no noticeable performance issues or lag. With its vibrant art style, memorable characters, and innovative rhythm-based mechanics, Hi-Fi Rush offers a refreshing and exhilarating experience for players seeking a unique blend of action, music, and rebellion against corporate tyranny. Steelrising is an action role-playing video game that offers players an alternate take on the French Revolution, where the streets of Paris are overrun by creepy automats. The game's unique setting blends historical elements with fantastical steampunk-inspired technology and wraps it all in a nice, neat Souls-like package. Players take on the role of Aegis, an advanced automaton created to protect Queen Marie Antoinette as they navigate the streets of Paris and engage in combat against both human and mechanical foes. While the game's setting and premise are intriguing, Steelrising does little to distinguish itself from other Souls-like titles. The combat, while acceptable, lacks the depth and challenge that fans of the genre have come to expect. Additionally, the game's pacing and progression can feel uneven at times, leading to moments of frustration. And from the locations I've been to so far, I'm not impressed. It all feels more or less the same, which is a massive problem for Souls-like games which need to have constant variety to avoid feeling repetitive. I think the name of the game sums up the entire experience. I don't hate it, but it's not really doing anything for me. It feels like the devs chose something that they thought their target audience would like, as opposed to trying something new or innovative to win them over. For those seeking a fresh take on the French Revolution with a touch of the macabre, Steelrising may be worth a look, but it's unlikely to captivate players for an extended period. Loddlenaut is a unique and engaging game that invites players to embark on an underwater adventure with a refreshing twist. Unlike the intense survival elements of games like Subnautica, Loddlenaut offers a more relaxing and therapeutic experience as you explore the ocean depths. The gameplay is centered around using your gadgets and tools to gather, sort, and recycle the ocean's pollution in an efficient and environmentally friendly manner, and then use the recycled materials to craft items and upgrades. It's a very satisfying game loop that can hook you into that familiar just 5 more minutes mindset that ends up becoming another hour of play. Need a break from your hard labor? That's where Loddles come in. These are the sea creatures you'll find in the various areas. They need to be cleaned before you can assign them to a habitat, name them ridiculous things like coconut, feed them, play with them using the toys you craft, and help them to grow so that they can eventually make their own little babies. One of the standout features of Loddlenaut is its charming animation style and soothing atmosphere. The vibrant underwater environments and the adorable Loddlenaut character create a visually appealing and calming experience, making it a perfect game for players seeking a more relaxing and meditative gaming session. As you progress through the game, you'll encounter a variety of challenges and obstacles, but the focus remains on that cathartic process of cleaning up the ocean. The game's mechanics are intuitive and easy to grasp, allowing players to immerse themselves in the task at hand without feeling overwhelmed. The game feels at home on the deck. It's the kind of game you'd want to play while lying in bed, relaxing after a busy day right before you nod off for the night. Unless you sleep with your PC in your bed, the deck's going to be the best way to do this. Supposedly, King of the Castle is a unique party game that blends social dynamics with the strategic elements of a monarchy simulation. Designed to accommodate up to 24 friends or 100 stream viewers, this game offers an interesting concept that sets it apart from traditional party games. Unfortunately, the biggest problem with this game is getting people together. If you've got 3 to 24 friends, then good for you. Just don't rub it in for the rest of us. Instead, why not come and be our friend and subscribe to the channel? We can send each other deck pics. Once we know each other better, of course. This game does have an official Discord server where you can gather people, or so I've heard, but obviously that has the downside of having to interact with strangers on the internet, and we all know how much of a disaster that can be. It's a lot of effort to play a game. Even for the purpose of reviewing this game, I just couldn't be bothered, so I didn't. Which is why the game isn't well suited for the pick up and play style of video gaming that many Steam Deck users are looking for. For all I know, it could perform and play perfectly fine on the deck, but the effort of finding people and arranging a play session will be a large deterrent for most people. Unless of course you've been invited to a party and you have no qualms whipping your deck out in front of everyone so you can all play. Bravery and Greed is a roguelite that doesn't necessarily break new ground in the oversaturated genre, but it still manages to be an overall enjoyable experience. The game is clearly heavily inspired by Dead Cells, with the design of the map in the top left, the use of the down button for interactions, and just the general design of the gameplay. There's also a few nods to Towerfall Ascension, with the overworld UI and even things like the rogue's bow mechanics. Taking inspiration from these other well-loved games isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does set the game up to be compared with them, and my initial reaction was Dead Cells was much better. Which is probably why the movement felt clunky when I first started playing. Dead Cells' movement is very slick and fine-tuned, while playing this felt like controlling a teenager who had just gone through a growth spurt. In particular, the left joystick felt like it needed to be pushed out a lot further than most other games to get out of the dead zone and get the character moving. But fortunately for the game, that problem is easily solved on the deck. Thanks to Steam input, the dead zone on the stick can be dropped, getting around that clumsy joystick. As you'd expect from an action roguelite, the combat is frantic and unpredictable, forcing players to think on their feet and make quick decisions. In each level, you have to fight your way through to the end of the dungeon, where you'll face a boss. And also, as you'd expect from a roguelite, you'll probably have to take on the boss a few times before you finally beat it within mere inches of your life. One of the things I liked most was the ability upgrade system. Abilities are provided through altars. The first altar you come across, you'll get to choose from one of 4 deities to worship. Once a deity has been chosen, every ability you are offered at altars for the rest of that run will come from that deity's tree. It's a welcome change that adds a touch of personalization where most roguelites would just offer you a few choices from the entire pool of abilities. The game also has some interesting random events, like freeing a dog from a cage who then joins you on your adventure, attacking all the various monsters you come across. Who's a good boy? Ultimately, Bravery and Greed may not be the most innovative title in the roguelite space, but it's a well-executed and entertaining game that fans of the genre are likely to appreciate, and it feels right at home on the deck. The best horror games aren't the ones that go for the jumps and quick scares. They're the ones that give you that sense of creepiness and uncertainty, and this game does an excellent job at that. Amanda the Adventurer is a first-person adventure game that appears cute and lighthearted on the surface, but very quickly takes a dark and unsettling turn. As the player, you find yourself in an attic filled with lots of discarded toys and objects that you can interact with, one of which is an old VHS cassette tape and a TV. I won't go into too much detail as I don't want to spoil the game, but what looks like an innocent children's TV show very quickly starts to make you feel uneasy. Even with just the tape skips, sound blemishes, and visual glitches alone that are scattered throughout the videos, the game both nods to old VHS tapes while creating a truly unnerving atmosphere. The attic interactions further add to this, with the uneasy silence, dim lighting, and seemingly mundane objects. Nothing about this should be scary, and yet it is. The game does require a mouse and keyboard, but that's what makes it perfect for the deck. Using the trackpad as a mouse and the right trigger for mouse clicks, very quickly you'll forget that the game wasn't developed for the deck. I will say that having to call up the on-screen keyboard and having it block out what I was trying to type did distract me from the experience, which is not what you want in a horror game. I'll be honest, I didn't expect much going into this game, but the game masterfully blends elements of horror and psychological thriller, creating a deeply unsettling experience that lingers long after you finish playing. The only other game I enjoyed on the deck that did something similar to this was Inscription, which is an amazing game by the way. If you're a fan of horror games, or even occasionally like to dabble in them, then this game will be a short but enjoyable foray into that familiar feeling of uneasiness. I generally don't like visual novels, and I tried to keep an open mind going into this one, but I despised this one the most. Mediterranean Inferno is a visual novel that tries to explore the lives of 3 men reuniting after the COVID-19 pandemic. Until 2020, the men were supposedly the life of the party, loved by everyone, called the Sun Boys because the world revolved around them apparently. Then the pandemic hit, and it was the end of the world for them. Unfortunately, the whole thing came across as a narcissistic, self-indulgent whinge. In the part that I managed to get through before giving up on the game entirely, the character was going through an existential crisis which was presented in what the game calls mirages, but it might as well have been an acid trip. There was a lot of symbology, but essentially the character was just whining about having a quarter-life crisis. Yeah, apparently that's a thing now. And about how their grandparents and parents messed up the world, and about hating their parents, but it's well deserved. And oh woe is me, wah, 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 somebody call the wambulance. The game handles and performs just fine on the deck, and while selecting arrows to move around in the Mirage sequence feels really awkward, it still works. But most of the appeal of playing games on the deck is that quick burst of enjoyment when you're on the go or have a bit of free time, and this game is not that. Thank God the deck makes it so easy to uninstall games. This is one game that I am never coming back to. That's all the games in this month's bundle. 2 of them you'll probably want to skip, but all in all, it's a pretty good collection of games. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on next month's review, and feel free to let us all know in the comments what you thought of this month's games. Just don't bother us with comments about how bad Mediterranea Inferno is, because I did warn you. See you all next time, deckheads.